want to give you my full thoughts on the Acolyte episode 8 and some thoughts on the series as a whole now that it's all out there. There's a lot of mixed reactions to it. I actually thought the last episode was one of the better ones. Not my favorite episode, but still a lot better than episodes 1 through 4, certainly. But it did give us an opportunity to see a conclusion for Soul. And that, to me, that's the biggest story in The Acolyte, is Soul's story. To me, it's not really about Osha and May, but it's about this Jedi who's very conflicted. He wanted to do the right thing, and then after he made some decisions that went poorly, right, resulting in some, well, not all his fault, but many deaths, together with the other Jedi, and he did seek to cover that up. He wanted desperately to find both twins so that he could prove that he was justified in the decision that he made, because he kept saying, well, I was trying to protect you, I wanted to save you both, but now if I can have both of you, then the council will believe me. So he's very obsessed with getting the council to believe him, to get them on his side. So he is fearful of the consequences, which makes Soul a more complex and compelling character. Now, less compelling is actually Osha and May, and I'm going to treat them like one character since technically they are two sides of the same consciousness, right? And I just feel like there was a lot of unearned emotional responses there. We know that both of those characters had a hard time with motivations, right? They kept switching motivations very quickly, which made it hard to really understand what was going on inside their heads. And then in that last episode, there were some moments where they would suddenly burst into tears, and it was a little confusing. I get that there probably should have been some emotional tension there. It was just sort of hard to believe it, and I'm not sure if that was the acting or the writing just didn't quite get us there when they had that response. Keimer, on the other hand, did have a pretty interesting journey. I loved seeing how he was surprised and sort of struggling when Osha had the helmet on and started to use her witch powers on him, and his eyes went black, and he was trying to get the helmet off her and was finally able to do it, and I guess that sort of broke the spell or the lack of control that she was showing in that dark moment. But he also is conflicted himself, right? Because he's trying to be this kind of dark, evil guy, and he's certainly done some horrible things, committed murders, killed Jedi, but at the same time seems to be attracted to Osha, I guess, romantically too, possibly. It's a weird, kind of confusing, relationship. And the appearance of Darth Plagueis, while exciting to see him, it doesn't give us much. So the issue is, if we're going to have a second season, we kind of need one now in order to wrap up some of these hanging plot lines that they have out there. Now, Venestra did a better job in this episode. She got a lot more screen time for sure, but did she understand that it was really Keimer and Osha and May that were to blame? I'm a little confused about what she really walked away from that planet understanding, or if she really did believe that, yes, in fact, it was Soul that went nuts and kind of killed everybody, because that's what she basically went back and shared. Or is she just doing that because she's trying to protect the Jedi, but she really does know what happened, and that's why she's going to Yoda at the end to be like, hey, some bad stuff went down, I've got this evil pupil. She stated she knows that he would turn to evil, and she wants to find him and stop him. Clearly she had something to do with that. He's got her laser whip marks on his back, so I don't think that her hands are completely clean either. Now, there's a lot of people that are really concerned about, oh, this made the Jedi look bad and evil and naughty and whatever. There have been plenty of Jedi that have turned to the dark side, by the way, besides just Anakin, especially if you were into the expanded universe, or even on the canon side, there's plenty of them. So I don't know why we're so surprised or acting like that somehow ruined the Jedi. There's still plenty of good Jedi out there. I don't think that means that every Jedi was terrible. We already know that the organization of the Jedi was slowly starting to get complacent and get to a point so that when the prequels came around, they were blindsided, right? Now that's the other argument, right? Is they're saying, well, why were they blindsided if this happened? Because it looks like there was a sort of cover-up where not all the facts were shared, and that ultimately is why things ended the way they did. Now, the lightsaber fights, of course, were terrific, and I love seeing those. This time we got some in the daytime, so we got the full light on them. There was no kind of hiding in the dark to sort of make it look better, and they looked good. There's some unique styles, a little bit of floating through the air suddenly in slow motion was a little off, but it still very cool. And I love how Khyber's still trying to use his spinning lightsaber and Soul's kind of pushing him out of the way with the Force. I love that. Ultimately, what I think this series suffered from was just a lack of time management and dialogue maturity and just overall writing prowess. It just needed a little more professionalism in those areas, and I think it could have pulled off a much more satisfying series. The conclusion for me was better than I expected. I was really worried going into it they wouldn't be able to wrap things up very well, and they actually brought them together better than I expected. The motivation for Soul to potentially shoot May when they were in the separate ships was a little confusing. I'm not sure why he was like almost thinking like he would do that, because that didn't play into his reasonings. But Basil stopped him. Basil was a confusing one too. I'm not sure what he was trying to do, or I don't know. He confuses me. Am I alone in that? Overall, I do think it's a worthy addition to Star Wars. Not perfect. I thought it was better than the Obi-Wan series. I do. And parts of it were better than Book of Boba Fett. Parts of it were kind of the same. Parts of it were, not as good. So it's somewhere in that realm. I didn't think it was as good as Ahsoka. Definitely not as good as The Mandalorian or Andor, certainly. But it's in the mix. And there's a story to be told, and I want Star Wars to tell new stories that aren't just in the existing timelines. Like I want them to break out of it and tell something really new, or like in Ahsoka, go out to Peridia and tell some wild story that is completely disconnected from the rest of the Star Wars universe, that has its own consequences and unpredictability to it, so that we're not assuming everything's going to lead back to this place. We know where it's all going. I want to go in with maybe more tension, like I don't know what's going to happen. Like in this series, I actually liked that they killed Soul off. I mean, I don't like that he died, but he was my favorite character by far. But I liked that they gave him like a full arc, and then he died in the end. The process of killing him, in fact, was so hard for Osha that she bled that Kyber crystal and turned her lightsaber red. And I do think that was cool. I don't know how well that squares with Legends or other instances where people have bled their Kyber crystals, or how hard it is to do that. But it was cool to see that effect in live action. If you haven't subscribed yet, man, I'd appreciate it. I'm trying to build up a channel here. This isn't just Star Wars content. This is any Disney Plus content. I'll be doing, reviews, reactions as different things come out. Just in a few days, I'll do one for The Young Girl in the Sea that's about to come out, and then of course we've got Agatha All Along coming out in September. Lots of stuff on the way. But please leave a like and leave a comment. Thanks, guys.